What up guys, it's Sheepai back with another video. This time it's going to be on Paleozoic Tearlaments, which is a deck popularized by Aaron from Top Tier Gaming YGO. He topped original with it, and even if you've been around, like, I feel like it was last year or in the last 1.5 years, um, there was already theory about Paleozoic Tier. There was a YCS feature match, for example, or I believe two. Sadly, I couldn't find them because, like, Konami doesn't label the decks properly when uploading the videos, or maybe they took it down. Don't know. But at least there was feature matches and stuff. But to be completely honest, I didn't look at the deck beforehand until, like, Aaron topped with it, because this was like, for me, the spark that lighted everything, to just know that the deck is capable of doing something and it's worth exploring. I built a list that fulfills my needs, what I expect from the deck, but as mentioned, all the credits for the base idea and everything goes out to him. But let's get into the deck profile so you can see what I came up with. Starting off with the standard Tearlaments cards, which you will just max out on, just so you can always play on both turns. Most of the time, if you have like something like Pearl Rhino, you will either search Rhino or Merly, depending on the hand. And funnily enough, in this deck, I really often search Merly with Pearl Rhino just to mill 3, to get everything started, because most of the time you will be milling in your opponent's turn, and your turn will just be a setup turn where you just do some things but not all the things. So more often than not, I found myself adding the Merly, which is kind of weird because I never done this in normal Tearlaments. Then it will always be Rhino and Sheeran, or maybe Tearcash if you have everything else. But in general, you just max out on them. Yeah, nothing to say here. Then additionally, we got 3 Pearl Rhino, 3 Scream, 3 Saliex. I know in the list of Aaron, he was only playing 1 Pearl Rhino. I totally do not agree with it. I will always play 3 Pearl Rhino until some Forbidden and Limited list prohibits me from doing it. The reason is pretty simple. If you've seen my tier list, not tier list, Tearlaments deck before, I was already mentioning, when I'm building a Tearlaments deck, I'm assuming an average of 6 mills per turn, which means like Scream and Sheeran, Scream and Tearlaments Kashtira, or any other combination, just as an average. So when I'm going through the ratios and seeing if the probabilities match the things I need, I have a number to go off with, and I feel like 6 is pretty good to assume. But in this deck, you will have more than 6 on average, because you play cards like Needlebug Nest, which already give you 5 mills. So this deck mills better than standard Tearlaments. And even in standard Tearlaments, you really want 3 Pearl. So I feel like there's no real reason of not doing so, even if it's a bad mill, as long as everything else is like a good or okay mill. You really don't care about it. And at the same time, the game plan of the deck is maybe not that easy to understand if you haven't tested it yourself. But basically, it's like you have your Tearlaments engine, which does some things on your turn going second, playing into boards, but not clearing the board or anything. It just like cracks it a little. And by doing this, it gets a lot easier if you have a combination of tier cards, and Pearl Rhino just gives you this combination of Tearlaments cards. Like, for example, even Sheeran and Rhinoheart are really good together. You can play really good into fields. Also having Tearcash plus Rhinoheart, really good to playing into fields. Like, you just want to bet out some form of interruption, then slap a Typhon on it, or maybe don't, and just set a Saliak, do your thing, set your order cards. Just Pearl Rhino promotes everything I've explained right now, because doesn't matter what you do, along the way of playing, you will get a free pop, which is simply insane. And as mentioned, you can get to Merly and to Sheeran and to Halfness. It's really easy. So I feel like you just need to play 3 per Loreno. I don't see a reason right now. Yeah, so I'm not playing the Meta Noise just because I'm not really a fan of it, because milling it requires you to have setup, and I will always search Saliak over Meta Noise, and even if I already have Saliak, I will search another Saliak to send with Rhino Heart. So just having the Meta Noise never came up for me, other than just being like a mediocre draw and a mediocre mill. Like I don't really feel like it's necessary. I'd rather have the space in the deck. So the last 2 cards of the first half of the deck, of the first 20, are Trivicama and Shuffler. Of course, it's Medora because he has better stats. But in general, Trivicama can be sided out against decks that go on really oppressive boards, because then you just need the good draws, and it doesn't matter what you mill if you don't get to the milling in the first part. So this can be sided out because it's just a bad draw. But most of the time it's fine. Just another Omni Searcher to get you going. Even just searching like something like Saliak or Scream is really amazing. Yeah, standard tier card. The Shuffler is not for the users what you might be thinking. Most of the time it's just to give you back your resources, because with this deck you're going to be on 10 or less cards. I would say like an average is like 7 cards or 6 cards left in deck, and you would just cycle through those every time. And it's really easy for you to not have any resources left, so you want the Shuffler to put them back. And like I feel like I have not put 3 of my opponent's cards into the deck once with this deck. Most of the time it's 1 of them and 2 of mine, so it's a little disruption, but more importantly, it just puts back my resources like Tearlaments, Kashtira's, or Saliak, because in some matchups I maybe set out a Scream or a Saliak, so I want them back. So this is really good for the resources, and I feel like you don't really take it out, except against like decks that have not good of a resource game, because they're so combo heavy and combo focused. So you don't need to put back your own resources, because most of the time you just have more resources because of the nature of your engine. But yeah, so just keep in mind that it's to put back resources and just be a little disruption, and not be like, okay, I'm just gonna empty your graveyard, unless you're sure you will win at some point. And finally, we are getting into the interesting part of the deck, like the not tier cards. Starting it off, we have 3 Mothman and 2 Backtracks. I don't play Nessie, simply because I don't feel like you need to have an Aqua in the graveyard. Kaleido Heart is cool and such, but just because you're going that deep into your deck, you will have 2 Tearlaments monsters in the graveyard, and maybe sometimes because of just the lower amount of monsters you have, you will not always use the first Tearlaments name, you mill, rather than setting it up for later Kaleido Heart or Garura and stuff. So you're not going to need the Nessie, or just like to immediately put out the Kaleido, because you can do it also a later turn, which is an absurd way of thinking. But you're really good at just surviving. So it really comes up planning ahead for the next few turns rather than just planning ahead for the next turn. So I really enjoyed 3 Mothman. Basically, what you will also see in the extra deck, we're playing number 60, the Dugaris, because I feel like this is an insane card to have, and I feel like it's almost mandatory for the deck. And so I rather prefer to have the Mothman to go into rank for us. And I also want a lot of dangers, just so I can cycle through my deck better. And just having like discarding Tear Traps, discarding Paleozoic cards, like anything, just to cycle. And as stupid as it may sound, just like putting a Mothman on the field, cycling a card, and then slapping the Typhon on top of it, for example, is really cool and really useful. So like it's really good at just, as mentioned, the kind of cracking the board, but not really. And so the Mothman is a perfect card for it. So you can go into Dugaris. Other card, Backtrack. I was really confused about the card at first because I was like, okay, I cannot control when I mill it. But just a cool thing is like if you're going to mill Tear Cache and Backtrack, you can go channeling 1 Tear Cache, channeling 2 Backtrack. So you can basically kind of mill 3 because you can choose which 2 of the 3 you will mill because of the Backtrack. And if you hit the trap, you can stack it on top. And also with cards like Pearl you have moments where you can decide on if you want to mill first or shuffle your deck. So Backtrack just gives you a better percentage of hitting what you want because like if you mill the Backtrack along the way, you can just look at the top 3 cards of your deck, and if you have a way to shuffle your deck, you can decide if those are the mills you want or if they're not good enough. Sounds ridiculous, but comes up more often than not. So really big fan of the Backtrack, and just milling it going second, really good, really good. And also if you mill it in your own turn and you don't know what's on top of your deck, doesn't matter, like almost everything is a good mill. Just hitting a Paleo, really good if you don't have any in the graveyard. And it just sets the Paleo. Basically like hitting everything that isn't Pearl is really good. Even just hitting the Mothman is like you have a Dark in the graveyard for the Mud Dragon. Yes, you could have used it, but it just keeps the cycle alive. Then for the God cards, we're playing 3 Needlebug, 3 Dynamiscus, and 3 Morella. This is just the exact same thing as Aaron did in his deck profile. And I have been trying with 1 less Paleo and 1 more Paleo, the Leoncolia, or like 2 Morella, 1 Leoncolia. Leoncolia is one that puts back a banished trap, because I felt like when it's my turn with Alpabinia, it's really nice to search it, but it wasn't good enough of a draw. And also, if you wanted to search it, there's a really high percentage that you already milled it and you don't want to put it back with a shuffler. You want to rather put back tier cards to use. So I feel like those 6 are perfect, and Needlebugsiness is just insane. Really nice to play a lot of traps so that it's reasonable to actually set trap cards. Really cool. And the best thing about them is like they're really good at being just chained to destruction. So the thing is like if you went first or went second, you're just going to set 2 to 4 cards most of the time. And because you have stuff like the Rumor Karma Cannon, your opponent will try to remove the cards, for example, with SP Little Knight, Nightmare Phoenix and such. And if they just target one of these 2, you can just easily chain them, get some value out of it. And Morella is really good for it because you would just mill the Saliak, rise to full height, Karma Cannon, rollback anything, and they just wasted resources on it just to make a big field, because they cannot afford to just ignore your back row, because if there is the Rumor Karma Cannon, you would just wipe their complete field and they have no way of extending further. So I feel like those ratios are perfect. There isn't anything to change with it. Just like those are the cards. And you will be siding out a Morella for other good cards, depending on the matchup. Like this is going to happen, for example, stuff like Super Poly. And we're already getting into the last 6 cards of the deck, which are 2 Rise to Full Height, 2 Daruma Cannons, 2 Rollbacks. First of all, I feel like I want to run 3 of it. I cut them down to 2 because I felt like you don't really need 3, and I still stand by it. But like if there's anything in the deck I would cut, I would probably add in a 3rd Daruma Cannon. I just simply couldn't find anything I wanted to cut. I feel like this list is really good. It checks all my needs, or like all my wishes I have for the deck. So yeah, 2 Daruma, totally fine. 2 Rise to Full Height. Going first, you will side out 1 for the Tearlaments Crime. Or like you side out 1 against really control heavy matchups that cannot OTK you this easily. So, but just having 2 for the matchups that can easily OTK you, it's really useful. And just so you can guarantee see it. But I've also tested one. It is good. So like you could play 1 and 3, but I wouldn't advise you to do it. Other card to rollback. Honestly, in I feel like almost every game, or I would even say every game, I go through 2 rollbacks, and I feel like every time both of them matter. So I wouldn't advise you playing less than them. And you can say like, okay, yeah, those are bad draws, especially with Trivicama. First of all, if you really feel like that, you can play 3 Daruma and cut the Trivicama. I'd rather have the 2 rollbacks. Just because rollback puts on so much pressure on your opponent, simply by copying cards like Daruma, Karma Cannon, and such, they will most likely use SP to target the rollback, and then you can just chain the rollback and just get value out of it. But if you feel like those are bad enough of draws, always keep in mind we're playing 3 Mothman. Just to get them out of the hand, we have the backjacks, which can hit the Dynamiscus. And also you have the Dynamiscus itself, which you can draw. So I feel like there are enough scenarios where you get it out of the hand. And also stuff like Barricade Blocker. But I'm not gonna lie to you, there will be scenarios where you have one of them in the hand, which does not do anything in the moment, but you will get rid of it, as mentioned, because especially with 3 Pillarana and 3 Mothman, you will much easier get into the Barricade Blocker or anything such like it, so that you can easily discard a card, so there won't be any problems with it. But I totally understand if it seems risky to you. I would just highly advise you run 2 rollbacks, because as mentioned, every time for me it came up. I don't feel like there were games where I wished I had only one. So we're closing out the deck profile with the extract. First of all, the 4 standard fusions. Nothing to say here. The only thing is like, sometimes I wish for a second Drago Superior, not because it's game winning, just for time management. Because a really important thing about the deck is time management, and you need to be quick about it. And like, your opponent will take a lot of time just playing Yu-Gi-Oh, even if they're not slow playing or anything. And so like, I really want the second Drago Superior to just be more aggressive with my cycle of Mud Dragon into Stropelia and then put another Mud Dragon on the field. But then I broke the cycle, so I would need a second Dragon Stropelia. This is a thing that came up for me multiple times. It wasn't that big of a deal because I won anyway, of just playing it conservatively. But a lot of times I felt like I could be winning faster if I had a second Dragon Stropelia, so I might be testing it. But it's just an interesting note. Then the XC monsters, Bahamut Toad, Opabinya, standard ones. And then we're playing Dugaris, Typhon, and Zeus. Probably one of the best XC monsters for the deck. Like, when I learned about the deck, that it's capable of competing, I was like, why is there no number 60? Because this card is hella broken. Of course, you can just not just go second, run into the opponent's deck and just drop it, because then it will get removed. But for going first, and even for stuff like turn 5, 6, or later turns, like when you're grinding, this card is really, really bonkers. Just so, as mentioned, same thing like the second Trigger Stipulia, it helps you to close out games faster. And this is really important because of time management. So, and also just get rid of annoying cards in the starting hand. So like, if you have a rollback in the hand and you just go for Dugaris to draw 2, put 1 back, or like discard 1, you can just get stuff like rollback and such out of the hand. And then later on just summon an SP, and call it a day. So I really enjoy this card. I feel like this card is really important, but even more important than it, it's Zeus. Zeus comes up for me way too much, just to make sure I win. And even if you slap down the Zeus, like, your opponent also is just seeing the point of, yeah, there's no return, I cannot grind it out any longer. Zeus is really broken, and I will never cut it. I really enjoy it. Even if you just slap it on top of an Opabinya, or you just go Bahamut Shark attack into something, and then main phase 2, detach a material, summon the toad, slap the Zeus over it because it says it cannot attack for the rest of the turn. So I'm pretty sure it should work. So you can just end on toad and Zeus, and you have way more of an like game-ending board where there's no return for your opponent, so you close out the game. And I feel like those are the 6xc monsters. I was thinking about playing Downard Magician for a more material Zeus, but here we'll always detach your material, so Downard doesn't come up to give you a second Zeus swipe unless you don't use the Opabinia, which I'm not planning on doing so. And the last 5 monsters being the Link monsters, SP and Sprint, pretty insane cards. SP is just here to end on going first most of the time. Then we have Barricade Blocker to get rid of annoying cards in the hand and just grabbing new follow-up. So you're basically exchanging stuff like Trivi Karma and Transaction Rollback for a Pearl or a Scream, which you milled, just to get them out of the hand. And then we have Dark and Goddess. Those are the cards. You need Sprint, especially for time reasons because it's Scattershot, but more importantly to mill Merly and have controlled fusion summons on your own turn, if you can get to it. So this is really cool. And then there's Goddess, which I felt like was really good just to simplify game states and always have an out by not using too much of your engine traps, or like of your traps in general, just so it's easier to outgrind the opponent. It doesn't come up as often for me, so maybe it could be replaced with something, but personally I really don't know what could be a good replacement unless like Nightmare Phoenix or Cerberus, but even then I feel like Goddess is better, so I will probably stick by her, and I don't need IP to go into SP. I just rather end on the SP already. I have a lot of cards to protect her by battle, like Scream and Pearl. So I don't really feel like the additional disruption going first with IP is really that necessary. You will not make IP going second most of the time, so I just feel like Goddess is better for more utility. And yeah, that's the extra deck. Not really that much to say here, except like Dugaris is really cool, and I would highly advise you on trying it. And yeah, this is the deck profile. This is my version. Let me know what you think of it. Hopefully you liked it, and really play this deck because it's a whole lot of fun. I love combo decks my whole life, and this is like the perfect bridge between like a trap heavy deck and a combo deck, because sometimes you will open just Tearlaments cards and you then just play Tearlaments, which is really cool. But also you can just open 1 or 2 tier cards, the rest is trap cards, and then you just play like this weird mixture of comboing off during your opponent's turn, but also just playing a trap heavy deck. So I really enjoyed, and yeah, let me know what you think of it. Hope you have a great day, and gonna see you in the next one. Bye bye.